Adam Carter, 45 years old, stood behind the floor-to-ceiling glass wall of his home office. The house itself, a starkly modern structure of steel and glass, was a $4 million monument to his precise calculations. It clung to the hills of Pasadena, and from this height Los Angeles sprawled out below him. It looked like a glittering carpet of fractured light, a city built on dreams and fault lines. As a successful insurance adjuster, Adam knew all about disasters. He spent his days evaluating other people's failures, quantifying the cost of ruin from fires, floods, and bad faith. He was the man who rebuilt things, but only after assigning a precise value to the wreckage. In here, within these walls, he was safe. His life was insured against failure. Beyond the thick plate glass and the pristine turquoise water of the infinity pool, his family existed in the perpetual California sunlight. His wife, Sarah, 44, looked sharp and capable even in her leisure. She was one of Pasadena's top real estate agents, a woman who sold multi-million-dollar dreams for a living. She laughed at something on her phone, a bright, manicured sound that barely carried through the glass. His son, Leo, 16, was all long limbs and effortless coiled grace. He was practicing free throws at the hoop by the pool deck, the thud of the basketball a rhythmic, confident heartbeat. A future college star, everyone said. His daughter Maya, 14, sat under a wide white umbrella insulated in her own world. A sketchpad rested on her knees, her artist's eyes capturing the perfect scene in quiet, serious charcoal lines. Adam watched them, a feeling of deep, almost suffocating accomplishment settling in his chest. This was the American dream rendered in perfect detail. He had built this. He had willed it into existence. He had clawed his way out of the gray, modest streets of Akron, Ohio, to build this glass fortress. He had escaped the quiet, frugal, honorable life mapped out for him by his mother, Evelyn. She was a good woman, a widowed librarian, who raised him alone on whispers and paperbacks. But her world was small, bound by due dates and Midwestern humility. Adam's world was not small. It was vast, expensive, and meticulously secure. He had built it with his own two hands, far from the shadows of his past. He believed he had left nothing to chance. He was Adam Carter, the successful man, the provider, the one who had finally decisively won. The change had not been sudden. It was a slow creep, an insidious erosion over the last 18 months. The perfection of their life, Adam realized, had been hiding a structural flaw. Sarah, his wife, was still physically present, but she was disappearing in plain sight. The easy laughter that used to fill their cavernous kitchen was gone. Now there was just the sharp, decisive click of her keyboard and the tap of her designer heels on the marble floor. Her phone, once a shared tool for family schedules and client calls, had become a guarded fortress. She started taking her calls on the far side of the pool patio, her back turned to the house, her voice a low, urgent murmur that the wind stole. "It's just work, Adam," she would say if he asked, her voice clipped and devoid of detail. "A difficult client." But her eyes, when they bothered to meet his, were opaque and cool. The warmth he had relied on for more than 20 years had evaporated. In its place was a polished, cold efficiency. She ran their home like a high-end property, listing perfect on the surface but utterly vacant. The children caught in this new silent winter felt the drop in temperature most. They were smart, perceptive kids, and they knew how to read the barometer of their parents' marriage. Leo, his son, all coiled energy, and 16-year-old frustration had cornered him in the garage 2 weeks ago. He stopped bouncing his basketball, the sudden heavy silence amplifying his words. "Dad, why is Mom so angry all the time?" he asked. It was not a simple question. It was an accusation. "She looks at you like she hates you." Adam had no answer for him. Maya, his sensitive 14-year-old, simply retreated. She stopped showing him her art, her easy laughter becoming rare and fragile. He found a recent sketchpad hidden under her bed. He flipped through the pages, a cold dread rising in his throat. The bright, hopeful watercolors were gone. The pages were filled with dark, heavy charcoal lines, jagged shapes, and small stick figures trapped in suffocating black boxes. Many of the figures were drawn without mouths. Adam sat across from her at their massive 10-foot oak dining table. It was a table designed for laughter and chaotic family dinners. Tonight it was a desolate, polished wasteland. The silence was louder than a scream, broken only by the faint, precise sound of her silverware on the porcelain. He looked at the woman opposite him, her perfect blonde hair, her expensive silk blouse, her face illuminated in the blue antiseptic glow of her phone screen. He tried desperately to find the girl he knew. He forced his mind back past the millions and the Pasadena house, back to a crowded, noisy high school hallway in Ohio. Sarah at 17 was all bright, unruly laughter and impulsive warmth. She was the one who had believed in him, the one who saw this impossible California life in him when he was still just a quiet, invisible kid from Akron. She had been his partner, his foundation, the one who held his hand when his mother Evelyn was diagnosed. Now this woman was a stranger. This version of Sarah was brittle and sharp, an elegant icicle he could no longer touch. He had to try. He could not let this drift into oblivion. Last week he had booked a reservation at their favorite restaurant, the one where he had proposed. Just us, Sarah, like we used to. She had not even looked up from her laptop. I can't, Adam. I have 3 listings and an escrow closing. I just don't have time for that. He tried again tonight, his voice sounding weak even to his own ears. Sarah, please, talk to me. Whatever this is, whatever I did, we can fix it. We always fix things. She finally looked up. Her eyes were not sad. They were not angry. They were empty. It was the look he used to see on clients who had lost everything in a fire, a look of total, devastating assessment. Adam, stop, she said. Her voice was flat and final, leaving no room for appeal. Just stop trying. I need space. I can't breathe. It happened at 7:30 in the morning. The doorbell chimed, a sharp, intrusive sound that cut through the morning silence. It was not a package courier. It was a process server, a pale man in a cheap polo shirt holding a single stiff manila envelope. Adam Carter, he stated, not asked. Adam nodded, his stomach tightening. He signed the electronic pad. The man handed him the envelope and was gone before the heavy front door had even clicked shut. Adam stood in the marble foyer, the envelope feeling cold in his hand. He tore it open. His eyes scanned the dense legal text, his brain struggling to catch up. He saw his name. He saw Sarah's name. He saw the words, petition for dissolution of marriage. He felt a strange, hollow relief. The Cold War was finally over. Then he saw the addendum. He read the numbered accusations, and the floor seemed to tilt beneath his feet. Compulsive gambling. The document alleged gross mismanagement of community funds. It spoke of undisclosed debts exceeding $1 million and embezzlement from client accounts. The words were alien, a language from a life he had never lived. And then the final suffocating blow: petitioner requests immediate sole legal and physical custody of the minor children Leo and Maya Carter, as respondents' behavior and addiction present an immediate and credible danger to their well-being. The paper shook violently in his hand. This was not a divorce. This was an annihilation. This was a mistake, a grotesque, impossible clerical error. He walked his legs feeling like lead down the hall toward the master bedroom suite. The door was open. He expected to find Sarah crying or raging or packing a bag in a fury. He found none of that. Sarah was standing at their custom walk-in closet, calmly folding a stack of silk blouses. A large black Toomey suitcase was open on the bed. She was organized. She was methodical. The sheer chilling normalcy of the action terrified him more than any scream could have. Sarah. His voice came out as a dry croak. She glanced up, her expression one of mild annoyance, as if he had interrupted her while she was balancing a checkbook. He held up the papers, his hand trembling so much he could barely keep them straight. What is this? This is psychosis, Sarah. Gambling. He laughed, a short, sharp, ugly sound. I don't even know how to play poker. What the hell is this? Sarah placed a final, perfectly folded blouse into the suitcase and zipped a side pocket. She did not look at him. The bank statements do not lie, Adam, she said, her voice flat. And the credit card bills. You have been hiding this for far too long. I refuse to see it. What statements? He demanded, his voice rising, breaking through the polite, cold silence she had built. What bills? Show me the proof, Sarah. This is a lie. This is all a goddamn lie. She stopped packing. She closed the lid of the suitcase with a quiet, final thud. She finally turned her body rigid and faced him. Her eyes were not the eyes of the 17-year-old girl he fell in love with in Ohio. They were not the eyes of his wife. They were the eyes of a hostile stranger, cold, clear, and full of absolute, unwavering judgment. That is the problem, Adam, she said, her voice cutting through him. I do not even know who you are anymore. She paused, picking up her purse from the dresser. You are not the man I married. Maybe you never were. The next 6 weeks were not a legal proceeding. They were a public execution. Adam found himself in a sterile wood-paneled courtroom that smelled of old coffee and floor wax. He sat in his one remaining suit, which already felt loose and unfamiliar. Sarah's lawyer, Patricia Voss, was a predator. She was a sleek, expensive woman with a voice like surgical steel. She did not argue. She presented. She laid out her case with a devastating, irrefutable rhythm. "Your Honor, we have bank statements," she said, and a thick binder was placed before the judge, showing consistent wire transfers from Mr. Carter's personal accounts to various offshore entities known for online gambling. Adam had never seen these documents in his life. "We have casino receipts," she continued, "from Las Vegas, Bellagio, Wynn, totaling over $80,000 in the last 6 months alone." She presented the receipts. The signature on them was a perfect, terrifying forgery of his own. "We even have a deposition, Your Honor, from Mr. Carter's former colleague at the insurance firm stating he personally witnessed Mr. Carter altering client files to cover his financial shortfalls." His own lawyer, Robert Chen, was a decent man, but he was drowning. During a recess, he leaned against the hallway wall, his face pale. "Adam," he whispered, "I am trying to fight this, but this evidence, it is ironclad, it is too real. Are you absolutely 100% certain you did not maybe go to a bachelor party or—" "I am being framed," Adam yelled, his voice echoing in the empty hall. "Robert, someone created this. This is not real." Robert just looked exhausted. He adjusted his tie. "Adam, the judge does not care what is real. He cares what is proven, and she is proving it." The final judgment was swift. The judge, a stern woman in her 60s, looked at Adam with undisguised contempt. "Mr. Carter," she said, her voice ringing with moral authority, "this court finds your behavior reprehensible. To risk your family's future on such selfish vice is unconscionable." She granted Sarah everything. The $4 million house was to be sold immediately. Sarah was awarded 100% of the proceeds. She was awarded the brokerage accounts, the savings, the cars, and then the final gavel. This court grants petitioner sole legal and physical custody of the minor children Leo and Maya Carter. Adam stopped breathing. "No," he whispered. "Please." The judge looked at him over her glasses. "Mr. Carter will be permitted supervised visitation 2 hours per week contingent upon his immediate and verifiable enrollment in a certified gambling addiction treatment program." He was branded. A criminal, an addict, and a failed father, all in one sentence. He stumbled out of the courthouse, blinded by the harsh Pasadena sunlight. Sarah was waiting by a black SUV, her sunglasses on, looking immaculate. She saw him and walked over her heels, clicking on the concrete. She was smiling. It was a small, tight, satisfied smile. "It is over, Adam," she said. He tried to speak, to appeal to the woman he had known for 20 years. "Sarah, the kids. You cannot, please." She cut him off. Her voice was light, almost cheerful. "You will never see Leo and Maya again. Not really. I am moving them to Portland next week. My sister lives there." "You cannot," he choked out. The visitation. "The court gave me sole custody, Adam," she corrected him as if speaking to a child. "I can move wherever I am approved. And you," she looked him up and down, taking in his one rumpled suit and his shattered expression. "You have no money left to fight me. You have nothing." She turned, got into the gleaming black vehicle, and drove away, leaving him standing on the courthouse steps with nothing but the clothes on his back and a court order labeling him a menace. The final severance came 2 days after the hearing. A registered letter from the California Department of Insurance arrived at the cheap motel where he was staying. The language was cold, brutal, and official. His license to practice as an insurance adjuster was indefinitely revoked, pending the results of a criminal investigation into the fraud and embezzlement allegations. The career he had spent 25 years building was over. His name was now Poison. He was not just divorced. He was erased. He had no money, no job, and no legal right to see his children. Sarah's lawyers had frozen everything. He had $900 in cash and an old 20-year-old Honda Civic with peeling paint on the roof. It was a car he had kept for sentimental reasons, a relic from his past. Now it was his only possession. There was only one place left to go. A small vinyl-sided house in Akron, Ohio. His mother Evelyn's house. It had sat empty for 2 years, ever since she had passed away. Adam had paid the minimal property taxes and utilities from a distance, always telling himself he would fly out next month, next quarter, to finally clean it out and sell it. He had been too busy, too important, too successful to deal with the modest artifacts of his past. Now his spectacular failure was forcing him back into its quiet, dusty embrace. He bought a map at a gas station, put his single suitcase in the trunk, and pointed the car east. 1,200 miles. The drive was a waking nightmare, a hypnotic blur of diesel fumes, scalding coffee from foam cups, and the monotonous drone of the interstate. He drove for 3 days, sleeping in 24-hour diners and damp $60 motels, haunted by the ringing of his silenced phone. With every mile, he felt his life unwinding, spooling backward. He had driven this route in reverse as a young man, desperate to escape the gray, narrow confines of Ohio. He was leaving to become a success. He was the local boy who made it, the one who built the glass fortress in the hills. Now he was just a 45-year-old failure crawling back in a broken-down car. 3 months ago, he stood in his office looking down on the glittering electric sprawl of Los Angeles. Today, he pulled onto a cracked driveway, the engine ticking in the silence, staring at his mother's overgrown weeds and the chipped, grinning face of his neighbor's ceramic garden gnome. He pushed the key into the stiff lock. The front door groaned open, scraping against the worn wooden threshold. The air that hit him was not the smell of decay. It was the smell of his childhood. It was a dense, still, quiet smell, a mixture of dried lavender, old paperbacks, and the faint, sweet scent of the lemon furniture polish his mother had always used. The house was a small 1960s ranch, a simple box of a home with pale yellow vinyl siding. Inside, time had stopped 2 years ago. Nothing had been moved. Evelyn Carter's reading glasses, a pair of simple wire frames, rested on the arm of her favorite overstuffed armchair. Next to them, a book lay face down, marking her page. A paperback thriller. The irony made Adam's stomach clench. The dust motes dancing in the single beam of afternoon light seemed to be the only things that had moved in 24 months. He walked through the small, carpeted rooms, his expensive California shoes silent on the shag rug. This was the house that had always represented safety. He sank onto the sofa, the floral pattern stiff beneath him, and the memories of his mother Evelyn washed over him with a force that nearly broke him. Evelyn Carter. She had been a quiet woman, a town librarian who wore cardigans and spoke in the hushed, polite tones of her profession. But beneath that gentle exterior was a spine of absolute steel. She was his fortress. When his father died in that supposed construction accident, she had never once let Adam see her break. She just carried on a model of quiet Midwestern resilience. She was the one who taught him that honor and hard work were the only currency that mattered. He remembered now, sitting in the silence of her home, the strange anomaly of their finances. Adam was an insurance adjuster. He understood numbers. He knew exactly what a librarian in Akron, Ohio earned in the 1980s and 90s. It was not much. Yet they had never truly wanted for anything. He never had the best sneakers, but he always had new ones. When his first car, that old Honda, needed a new transmission, a bill for nearly $2,000, he had panicked. Evelyn had just gone to the local bank and paid for it in cash. When he was accepted into college, she had produced the money for his first year's tuition without blinking. He had asked her about it once when he was 19, home for Christmas. "Mom, how?" he had asked, gesturing around the humble living room. "How do you do it on your salary? I know what things cost." She had been folding laundry and she paused, a dish towel in her hands. She gave him that small, private smile, the one that made him feel like the center of the universe. "When someone depends on you, Adam," she had said, her voice soft but firm, "you just find a way." He had always assumed she meant careful saving, a hidden frugality. He never questioned it further. Now, sitting in the same living room, a 45-year-old ruined man, he felt the crushing weight of his failure. He had built a glass house in California, and it had shattered, revealing his own life to be a fraud. She had built this small, sturdy house of vinyl and wood, and it had endured. A new resolve hardened inside him, sharp and cold. This house was the only asset he had left in the world. This was the last gift from his mother. He stood up, looking around the room, not with nostalgia, but with the cold, calculating eye of an adjuster. This house was his war chest. He would not just clean it. He would tear it down to the studs if he had to. He would repair it, liquidate it, and turn every last cent of his quiet mother's legacy into a weapon. He would use the money to hire the best, most vicious lawyers he could find. He would fight Sarah, he would fight the lies, and he would get his children back. His new plan required supplies. Adam drove the old Honda to the local hardware store, a place that smelled of sawdust and fertilizer. He felt conspicuous and out of place in his California clothes, a ghost walking aisles he had not seen in 25 years. He grabbed a drywall knife, a tub of spackle, and was comparing two different shades of beige paint when a voice cut through the quiet. Adam Carter, I will be damned. Adam turned. A man in a dusty plaid shirt and worn Carhartt boots stood watching him, a heavy tool belt slung low on his hips. It took Adam a second to place the face beneath the baseball cap. It was Mark Jennings. They had played high school football together. Mark had been the backup quarterback, always simmering with a jealousy that Adam had mistaken for friendly competition. Now Mark was a local contractor, and the look in his eyes was not friendly at all. It was a look of profound, satisfied appraisal. "Hey, Mark," Adam said, forcing a tightness into his smile. "It's been a long time. You look good." "Well, well," Mark said, ignoring the pleasantry. He stepped closer, looking Adam up and down from his soft leather shoes to his expensive haircut. "Look who decided to come back, the California superstar gracing us common folk with his presence." The hostility was immediate, sharp and undisguised. Adam felt his neck flush. "Not really," he said, trying to keep his voice level. I'm here to fix up my mom's house." Mark let out a short, barking laugh that made a nearby employee look over. "Fixing it up," he repeated, savoring the words. "That's the story, is it? I heard a different one." Adam gripped the plastic paint can, his knuckles turning white. "I don't know what you're talking about, Mark." "Oh, I think you do," Mark said, his voice dropping into a conspiratorial, ugly whisper. "We heard all about it, Carter. Even out here in boring old Ohio, we heard you finally crashed and burned." He leaned in, the smell of chewing tobacco and sweat washing over Adam. "The gambling, the debts. Heard your wife took you for everything. Lost that big glass house, lost the kids. Lost it all." Mark shook his head, a grotesque performance of pity. "Hiding from creditors, are we? Coming back here to squat in your dead mother's house because you got nowhere else to go. It's a damn shame, Adam. A real shame." Adam felt the words land like stones. This was not just an insult from a jealous old acquaintance. It was the confirmation of his deepest, most septic fear. It was true. He was a failure, a fraud, and the entire world knew it. Mark delivered the final devastating blow. "Your mom, Evelyn, she was a good woman, a saint. She would be real proud of you right now." That broke him. Adam had no defense, no reply. The shame was a physical, suffocating thing sealing his throat. He said nothing. He dropped the can of paint, the sound echoing with a hollow thud on the linoleum. He turned, walked past Mark, and fled the store. He drove away empty-handed, rejected by his present, and now unequivocally despised by his past. He could not stay idle. To stop moving was to let the shame and the rage consume him whole. So Adam went to war against the house. He started in the small guest bedroom, attacking the faded floral wallpaper with a scraping tool. He worked with a frantic, punishing energy. He ripped and tore at the old paper, peeling back layers of his own history, his muscles burning, his lungs filling with the chalky dust of pulverized plaster. The physical ache was a welcome anesthetic. It was real. It was something he could control, unlike the phantom evidence and fabricated life that had destroyed him in California. He sweat through his t-shirt, the sound of the scraping blade the only thing in the world. He was working on his third wall when a soft, hesitant knock came from the back door. He froze, his entire body tensing. He was not ready to face another person, another look of pity or contempt. The knock came again, more insistent. He wiped the sweat from his eyes with his forearm and went to the kitchen. Through the screen door he saw a small, elderly woman standing on the concrete stoop. She was bundled in a thick cardigan despite the mild Ohio afternoon and held a steaming Pyrex dish in two oven-mitted hands. It was Mrs. Petrov, the woman from 2 doors down. She had lived on this street since before he was born, a fixture of his childhood as permanent as the oak tree in her front yard. He opened the door. "Mrs. Petrov." "I see you returned, Adam," she said. Her voice was a thick Eastern European rumble, a voice that had not changed in 45 years. "I see the lights. I see you working." She pushed the hot dish toward him. You are too thin. You must eat. This is goulash." Adam took the dish, the heat a sudden shock to his cold hands. "Thank you, Mrs. Petrov. You did not have to do that." "Evelyn?" She said, her dark, sharp eyes scanning his face, taking in the exhaustion and the raw grief he thought he was hiding. "She was always worried for you, always. Every time I see her at the mailbox, she talks about her boy in California, so successful, so far away." A familiar pang of guilt hit him. "I know," Adam said, looking down at the soup. "She was a great mom. She always protected me." Mrs. Petrov made a small, impatient sound in her throat, like tisk. "No," she said, her voice dropping, becoming sharp and focused. "You do not understand. You speak like a child. She did not just protect you, she protected you, like a guard, always watching." Adam looked up, confused by her intensity. "What do you mean?" "She was a good neighbor," Mrs. Petrov continued, her gaze unwavering. "Quiet, kind. But her eyes were not quiet. They saw everything. The car that passed twice. The salesman who stayed too long. She watched this street like a hawk." The old woman leaned in as if sharing a secret she had held for years. "She trusted me. Not many people, but me. She told me once many years ago after you had gone to that California." She paused, making sure he was listening. "She said, Mrs. Petrov, if anything ever happens to me, if my Adam ever comes back here and he is in trouble, you must tell him something. I promised her I would." Adam's heart began a slow, heavy drumbeat against his ribs. "Tell me what?" She said, "Tell him the heart of the house holds the truth. Do not trust appearances. Tell him the heart knows." Adam stared at her. The words were nonsense, the cryptic ramblings of an old woman, or perhaps a secret code between her and his mother. "The heart of the house," he repeated, tasting the strange phrase. I don't understand what that means." "I do not need you to understand," Mrs. Petrov said, straightening up, her duty complete. "I just need you to hear. I made a promise to your mother. Now my promise is kept." She nodded at the Pyrex dish. "Eat, it is no good cold." She turned and walked slowly back down the cracked sidewalk, her mission accomplished. Adam stood in the doorway, the hot dish burning his hands, the smell of goulash mixing with the plaster dust. The encounter left him more unsettled than before. He dismissed her words. It was just a strange metaphor. His mother was a librarian, not a spy. He went back to the guest room, back to the scraping, but the old woman's words echoed in the empty house, clinging to the air like the dust. The heart of the house holds the truth. He had retreated to the basement. It was a dark subterranean space that smelled of damp concrete and motor oil. The single small window was coated in decades of grime, letting in only a weak gray light. He was assessing the foundation, looking for cracks, when his phone vibrated in his pocket. The sudden electronic sound was violent in the tomb, like silence. He pulled it out, his hands filthy with dust. The screen glowed with an unknown number, an Ohio area code. His heart, which had settled into a dull ache, gave a sharp, painful kick. He answered it. "Is this Adam Carter?" a voice asked. It was a man's voice, cold, crisp, and professional. It was the voice of someone who charged by the hour. "Yes," Adam said. "Who is this?" "My name is Stephen Mills. I am an attorney with the firm of Hackett, Price and Mills here in Akron. We have been retained to represent your wife, Ms. Sarah Carter, in a local matter." A chill entirely separate from the basement's dampness snaked up Adam's spine. "I have a lawyer. She has a lawyer, in California. Why are you calling me?" "This pertains to a local asset, Mr. Carter." The lawyer continued, his tone perfectly flat, as if he were discussing the weather. "We are calling as a professional courtesy to inform you that Ms. Carter has filed an emergency petition with the Summit County Court. She is requesting an immediate expedited liquidation of the real estate property at your current location." The words did not make sense. "Liquidation," Adam repeated, his voice hollow. "What are you talking about?" "The petition cites the significant community debts you incurred, Mr. Carter, specifically the gambling losses and the embezzled funds. Ms. Carter is petitioning the court to apply the full proceeds from the sale of this asset against those shared debts." A hot black rage surged through Adam, so potent it made him dizzy. "She cannot do that," he yelled, his voice echoing off the concrete walls. "This is not community property. This was my mother's house. It belongs to me. It has nothing to do with her." There was a dry rustling sound, like the lawyer was checking his notes. "That is not what the law says, Mr. Carter." Under California community property statutes, any asset whose value was maintained using community funds is subject to division. Our records show, and your wife has provided receipts, that you paid the property taxes on this house for the last 2 years following your mother's passing from your joint checking account. Adam felt the blood drain from his face. It was true. A simple automatic online payment. He had done it without thinking. The hearing is set for tomorrow, Mills continued, his voice relentless. Given the extreme nature of your documented fraud and the risk of you liquidating the asset yourself, the judge is expected to sign the order. We anticipate having a court-appointed receiver at the property within 48 hours to change the locks and begin the liquidation process. Good day, Mr. Carter. The line clicked. Adam was left standing in the dark, the phone heavy in his hand. 48 hours. The clock was not just ticking. It was about to explode. He was not just fighting for his future. He was about to lose the last piece of his past. He was desperate. Absolute suffocating panic seized him. 48 hours. He was trapped in this damp gray tomb, and in less than 2 days, he would lose even this. He would be homeless, a ghost in his own life, while Sarah's lawyers picked apart the bones of his mother's legacy. He paced the concrete floor, his footsteps echoing in the subterranean quiet. He was a man trained to assess risk, to find the structural flaw, but he had no leverage, no assets, no angle left to play. He was ruined. He stared wildly around the basement, his eyes scanning the cobwebs, the stacks of old newspapers Evelyn had intended to recycle the forgotten childhood sled. Useless. All of it was useless. And then, cutting through the noise of his desperation, Mrs. Petrov's voice returned to him, her thick accent, her sharp, knowing eyes. Tell him the heart of the house holds the truth. Do not trust appearances. Tell him the heart knows. It had sounded like the cryptic sentiment of an old woman. But now, with the clock ticking down to 0, the words felt less like a metaphor and more like a map. The heart of the house. His eyes snapped to the corner. The furnace. It was an ancient cast-iron beast, a relic from the 1960s, stained with rust and anchored to the floor. It was the central heating unit. That was the heart, the literal mechanical heart that pumped life into the cold Ohio winters. He crossed the room, drawn by an illogical, frantic hope. It was just a furnace. But he was an insurance adjuster. He had spent his entire career looking for the small, overlooked detail, the thing that did not belong. He knelt on the cold concrete, his eyes scanning the base of the massive unit. He saw it. On the concrete floor just outside the footprint of the furnace were 2 long, thin scratches. They were faint, like something immensely heavy had been dragged, scraping the sealed surface just slightly. They were not old. They were clean. He looked closer, running his finger along the seam where the furnace met the concrete wall. The top of the machine was thick with 2 years of settled, undisturbed dust. But here at the bottom, along the back edge, the dust was different. It was thin. It was disturbed. It looked to his trained eye like it had been recently resettled. A jolt, cold and electric, shot through him. This furnace had been moved. His logical mind immediately rebelled. He stood up, shaking his head. This was insane. He was chasing ghosts. This furnace weighed, he estimated, at least 500 pounds. It was solid iron. His mother, Evelyn, had been dead for 2 years. Before that, she was a 120-pound librarian in her late 60s. She could not have moved this thing an inch. It was impossible. It was the desperate projection of a ruined man seeing patterns in the dust. He was losing his mind. He turned away, his brief hope curdling back into despair. He was just wasting time. He needed a real lawyer, a real plan, not a cryptic clue from a neighbor and a dusty furnace. He took 2 steps toward the stairs, and the lawyer's voice echoed in his head again. 48 hours. Court-appointed receiver. Change the locks. He stopped. He looked back at the furnace. Impossible. His mother could not have moved it, but what if she did not? What if she had someone move it for her? And why? The heart of the house holds the truth. What if the truth was not in the furnace, but behind it? The desperation overrode his logic. The world no longer made sense. A wife of 20 years was a stranger. His entire life was a fabricated lie. Perhaps the only thing that did make sense was the impossible. He had 48 hours before Sarah's legal machine ripped this house from his grasp. He had nothing to lose. He had to know. He grabbed a rusted crowbar from his father's old toolbox, wedged it into the small gap between the iron and the wall, and threw his entire desperate weight against it. The first task was the gas line. He was an adjuster, he knew infrastructure. He found the main shutoff valve behind the water heater, a rusted yellow handle. It was frozen stiff. He found an old pipe wrench in his father's toolbox and put his weight into it. He felt a corrosive grinding protest, and then a sudden soft release, followed by the faint smell of mercaptan. The heart was stopped. Now the body. He wedged the pointed end of the crowbar into the thin crack between the furnace and the concrete. He heaved. Nothing. It was like trying to move a mountain. The 500 pounds of solid iron did not budge. It mocked him. 48 hours, the lawyer's voice hissed in his memory. He jammed the crowbar in again, lower this time, and used a cracked piece of a 2x4 as a fulcrum. He threw his entire desperate 180-pound frame onto the end of the bar. A sharp, visceral pain shot through his shoulder, but he did not stop. He bounced on it, a frantic, ragged rhythm, his teeth gritted. A sound. A low, agonizing screech of metal scraping stone. It had moved. Maybe a quarter of an inch. He slumped against the opposite wall, his chest burning, sweat and plaster dust stinging his eyes. This was impossible. He was a 45-year-old man in ruined loafers, not a demolition crew. He thought of Mark Jennings, his condescending, pitying sneer. He thought of Sarah's cold, final smile outside the courthouse. "You have nothing." "No," he whispered to the damp air. "Not this." He attacked it again, not with technique, but with pure septic rage. He jammed and heaved, grunting with the effort, ignoring the pain in his back and shoulder. He worked for 10 minutes, a brutal, punishing eternity. The screeching sound returned louder this time. The furnace groaned, protesting as it slid another 6 inches and then a foot. It was enough. A gap black and promising was now visible between the back of the unit and the foundation wall. His hands were shaking. He fumbled for his phone and turned on the flashlight. He aimed the bright blue-white beam into the darkness. He saw it. It was not a hiding spot. It was a vault. Set deep into the concrete of the foundation itself, coated in cobwebs, was a small black iron square. It was an old safe, the kind he had not seen in 30 years. In the center was a single mechanical combination dial, its numbers worn, running from 0 to 99. The brief, wild surge of triumph vanished, replaced by a colder, deeper despair. He was saved only to be locked out. A combination. He had less than 48 hours. He could guess for the rest of his life and never open it. He leaned his forehead against the cold concrete wall, the smell of rust and old secrets filling his nose. This was a final cruel joke played by a fate that despised him. He had found the answer, and it was written in a language he could not read. He had to think. He had to stop being the victim and start being an adjuster. He slid down the wall, his back scraping the rough concrete, and sat on the cold floor staring at the dial. He had to get inside his mother's head. Evelyn Carter, the librarian, the quiet, organized woman who kept photo albums and paid her bills on time. What numbers mattered to her? Her birthday. He racked his brain. August 4th. August 4th, 1950. He crawled over his knees, grinding on the concrete. He cleared the dial. Right August 08. Left the 4th 04. Right the year 50. He pulled the small, stiff handle. Nothing. Locked solid. His father's death. He remembered the date. He always would. October 29th. He tried 1029 and the year. Nothing. The house address. 2121. He tried 021201. Nothing. This was hopeless. It was random. He was guessing. He slammed his fist against the concrete next to the safe, the impact sending a jarring pain up his arm. He cried out a short, sharp sound of pure frustration. He was a failure. He was the man in the hardware store. He was the man his wife left. He could not even solve his own mother's puzzle. He sat there breathing hard in the darkness, letting the failure wash over him. And in that total, absolute silence, a memory surfaced. It was small, trivial. It was the sound of his phone ringing years ago in his perfect glass house in Pasadena. It was always too early, the sun not yet up over the San Gabriel Mountains. He would grope for the phone, his voice thick with sleep, and he would hear her. her voice always so clear from 2,000 miles away. "Happy birthday, Fletcher," she would say. He remembered the name she used, Fletcher. The name from his old life, the one he had not heard in 35 years until he read it on the court documents. "Happy birthday, Fletcher. It is 7:23 a.m. He remembered groaning. "Mom, it's 4:23 a.m. here. Why are you always the first call?" And her answer always the same, a soft private laugh. "I know, I just wanted to be. That is exactly the time you were born. 7:23. My world changed at 7:23. His eyes snapped open in the dark basement. 7:23, 07:23. It was a start. But most combinations had 3 numbers. He stared at the dial. His birthday. She called him on his birthday, March 15th. What if? Not just the time, the date. His date. March 15th, 1977. 1. It felt right. It was not random. It was her, a librarian's logic. An event catalogued and filed. The day her old life ended and her new one, her secret one, began. His hands were trembling, caked with grime and flecks of his own blood from where his knuckles had split. He wiped them, smearing blood on his jeans. He knelt before the safe, his heart hammering against his ribs like it wanted to escape. He spun the dial, clearing it. His fingers were clumsy, right past 0 twice. He landed precisely on 3. He spun it left past 3, 1 full rotation. He stopped on 15. He spun it right again. His breath held in his chest and eased the dial to land on 77. He did not breathe. He put his fingers on the small cold handle. He pulled. It was stiff. It did not move. His heart sank. He pulled again, harder, using all his remaining strength. There was a sound, not a click. It was a deep, heavy, resonant thunk. It was the sound of massive, well-oiled bolts hidden within the wall retracting. The small iron door popped open by half an inch. He hesitated for a second, his entire life balanced on the fulcrum of this moment, a 45-year-old man about to be born or buried in a dark basement. He pulled the heavy iron door. It swung outward with a faint, oiled, silent whisper revealing a small black cavity. His flashlight beam cut into the darkness, illuminating the metal box. It was not empty. It was packed to capacity. The first thing he saw was the money. It was not a small bundle of emergency cash. It was a hoard. It was stacked in tight, dense bricks wrapped in old-fashioned paper bank bands, the kind he had only seen in movies. He pulled out the first brick, his dirty fingers smudging the band. $100 bills. They were old but crisp. He pulled out another and another and another. They were stacked 10 deep, organized by denomination. His adjuster's mind, the part of him that was still functioning, did the math automatically. He was looking at, he estimated, somewhere close to $850,000 in cash. The mystery of his childhood, the quiet anomaly of their finances, was suddenly shockingly solved. The $2,000 transmission for his first car. The impossible college tuition paid on time every semester. This was his mother's secret. This was how she found a way. This was not the savings of a frugal librarian. This was the war chest of a fugitive. Beneath the money, there were documents filed neatly in a heavy oilcloth pouch. He lifted them out. They were passports. 3 of them. He opened the first one. The name read Isabella Reyes. The photo, stark and official, was his mother. But it was not. It was a younger version of Evelyn, maybe from her late 20s. Her hair dyed a severe black, her mouth set in a hard line. The eyes were the worst part. They looked at the camera with a cold, flat indifference. This was not Evelyn Carter, the woman who read stories to children at the library. This was a stranger, a hard woman he did not know. He fumbled for the second passport. Catherine Walsh. This time the photo showed her with short, almost platinum blonde hair. The same eyes. Cold, assessing, and utterly foreign. There were matching driver's licenses for states he had never heard her mention. Arizona, Oregon, a social security card for each identity, all of them bearing his mother's face and these alien names. A cold, dreadful understanding began to form in the pit of his stomach. His mother, the quiet, predictable woman who organized bake sales and remembered everyone's birthday, had lived a life of profound, terrifying deception. She was not just a librarian. She was a ghost. At the very bottom of the safe, underneath the false identities and the mountain of cash, was a single thick envelope. It was a standard white business envelope, brittle with age. It was sealed not with moisture, but with a small red circle of wax, the kind he had not seen outside of old movies. On the front, in his mother's precise, familiar, elegant cursive, was a single word: Adam, not Fletcher. The name she had called him his entire life, not son or my dearest, Adam. The name she had given him at 7:23 a.m. on March 15th, 1977. The name that was the key to this vault. He fell back, his legs giving out from under him. He landed hard on the concrete floor, the impact jarring his teeth. He sat there in the filth and the darkness, the beam of his phone flashlight pointing at the ceiling, illuminating the ancient cobwebs like a constellation of lies. He held the envelope, his hands still bloody and trembling from his fight with the furnace-smeared dirt across the clean white paper. He thought of Sarah. He thought of the judge's contempt. He thought of Mark Jennings's sneer. He had spent the last 2 months believing his life was destroyed by a lie about gambling. He was wrong. He was realizing with a terror that hollowed out his insides that his entire life was the lie. The gambling, the divorce, all of it was just the final ugly symptom of a disease that had been in his blood since birth. He broke the wax seal with a trembling thumb. He tore the envelope open. His fingers, raw and streaked with blood and grime, fumbled with the brittle folded paper. He unfolded it. It was not a long letter, perhaps 2 pages written on thick cream-colored stationery. The ink was a deep dark blue and the handwriting was his mother's. It was the same precise, elegant cursive that had written his permission slips for school, the birthday cards, the labels on the photo albums. He began to read. My dearest Adam. It started. The name felt formal, distant. If you are reading this, it means they have finally found you and I am no longer there to protect you. A paralysis crept up his limbs, colder than the concrete floor. They. The word was a faceless, plural terror. He read on his pulse, hammering in his throat. You will be confused, Adam, and you have every right to be. I have spent my life building a wall of lies to keep you safe. I pray it was strong enough. There is no easy way to say this, so I will be direct. Your name is not Adam Carter. You were born Adam Costello. Your father's name was Vincent Costello. He was a good man. He was the bravest man I have ever known, and I loved him more than my own life. Costello. Vincent. The names were alien, blunt objects that his mind could not absorb. They meant nothing to him. Your father was not a construction worker. The letter continued, and Adam felt the air leave his lungs. And he did not die in a car accident. He was an accountant in Chicago, Adam. He worked for very powerful, very dangerous men. He discovered they were stealing, murdering, and corrupting everything they touched. He knew it was wrong, and he decided to testify. The dark basement seemed to be shrinking, the walls pressing in. He was murdered, Adam. He was executed, shot 3 times in his car on a Tuesday morning. The men who killed him were from the Falcone crime family. They were animals, and they wanted to silence him, but they failed. He had already given his ledgers, his proof, to the federal prosecutors. Adam stopped reading, his vision blurring. He looked at the stacks of money in the safe, then back at the letter. This was madness. This was a movie plot. This was not his life. His life was shag carpets and garden gnomes and a mother who worked at the library. I was the only other witness. He read, his hands shaking so violently he could barely hold the page. I worked as your father's bookkeeper. I saw the men. I knew the accounts. The day after your father's funeral, the Falcones sent men to our house. They were not there to grieve. They were there to eliminate the loose ends. Me. And you. You were 12 years old. A cold black hole opened in his memory. 12 years old. The year of the accident. The year they moved suddenly. The U.S. Marshals got to us first. We disappeared. 2 days later, Elena and Adam Costello were pronounced dead in a staged house fire, and Evelyn and Adam Carter were born relocated to a quiet street in Akron, Ohio. We were placed in the Witness Protection Program. WITSEC. We were given new lives, new histories, a new past. I became a quiet librarian. You became the son of a dead construction worker from a town that never existed. He dropped the letter. It fluttered to the concrete floor. The entire intricate structure of his life, every memory he possessed, every story he had ever told himself, it all collapsed. It was not just a lie. It was a fabrication. His entire modest, safe, boring Ohio childhood was a stage play meticulously directed by his mother, Elena. He saw it all now with a terrible, piercing clarity. Her gentle reminders to be careful, her insistence on knowing all his friends, Her strange, sudden anxieties when he traveled for college, her quiet, constant presence. It was not just maternal love. It was the calculated, paranoid vigilance of a soldier on a listening post, a guard on a prison wall. The safety he had always felt, the quiet, predictable life he had run away from to build his glass fortress in California, it was all a cage. He picked up the letter again, his hands numb. I could not touch our old money. It was dirty. The government gave us a settlement, a fund to start over and stay hidden. It was $850,000. He looked at the bricks of cash still sitting in the open safe. The exact amount. The mystery of the new transmission, the college tuition, the money that was always just enough. It was not a savings. It was a payoff. I kept it in this safe in case they ever found us. In case we had to run again. I lived in terror every single day of your life, Adam. Every new friend you made, every school play, every time you left the house, I was terrified one of them would see your face, recognize your father's eyes, and finish the job. I saved this money for you. It is your inheritance, and it is your emergency. It appears that emergency is now. He was not Adam Carter, the failed adjuster. He was not Evelyn's son. He was the son of a ghost named Elena, and he had been running from men he did not even know existed for 35 years. He was wrong. The first page was just the history. The final page of the letter was where the true horror lay, the part his mother had clearly written with a shaking hand. He read on the words on the page, beginning to swim, the blue ink blurring. My paranoia did not fade with time, Adam. It only sharpened. 3 years ago, I heard whispers through the old channels, contacts I had maintained from my former life. The Falcone family was stirring again. A new generation, just as vicious as the last, was looking for the ghosts of the Costello case. They were looking for us. I hired a private investigator, she wrote. A man in Los Angeles. I needed to be sure you were safe. I told myself it was just to watch over you, to see my grandchildren from a distance. But I was lying. I was putting a guard on my wall. Not because I did not trust you, my son. It was because I did not trust the world. Adam could barely breathe. A private investigator. His mother, the quiet librarian, had been running surveillance on his perfect California life. What he found did not just break my heart, the letter continued. It shattered it into 1,000 pieces. He sent me photographs, Adam. He sent me reports. It was your wife, your Sarah. She was meeting with men, secretly. Men who my investigator discovered after weeks of deep surveillance had direct traceable links to the Falcone family's West Coast operations. Adam felt a sour, hot bile rise in his throat. He shook his head, a violent negative motion in the dark. No, not Sarah. She was cold. Yes, she was ambitious. But she was not this. He forced his eyes back to the page. I do not know how they found her. I do not know if they threatened her or bribed her or tricked her into believing a lie. All I know is that she was working with them. She was giving them information about you, about your finances, about your life. Can you see it now, Adam? His mother pleaded from the page. The divorce, the sudden, impossible accusations of gambling, the fabricated evidence that appeared out of nowhere, the lawyer who destroyed you in court. It was all a performance, a grotesque, perfectly staged show designed by monsters. The truth hit him with the force of a physical blow. The bank statements, the casino receipts with his forged signature, the colleague who testified. It was not just a vicious divorce strategy, it was a coordinated professional demolition. It was all a lie Adam designed to do one thing, he read. Not just to leave you, not just to take your money. It was to ruin you so completely that you had no other choice. It was to strip you of your home, your children, and your profession. It was to make you run. They forced you back here, to me, to this house. The pieces clicked into place with a horrifying final sound. The lawyer's phone call this morning, the 48 hours. It was not just Sarah being vindictive, it was the next phase of the plan. They want you here, Adam. The letter concluded, the final words almost illegible, as if written under extreme duress. They are watching this house. I am certain of it. They have been watching it since I died. They believe your father Vincent gave me the original ledgers before he was killed. They think I hid that evidence here. Here in the one place I would feel safest, the one place I would run to. They think you know where it is. They sent you here to find it for them. He could not hold it in. Adam doubled over, his body convulsing, and he was violently sick on the concrete floor. The goulash Mrs. Petrov had given him, the one act of kindness he had received, burned his throat as it came up. It was not just a betrayal, it was a sacrifice. It was an execution. Sarah, his high school sweetheart, the mother of his children, had not just thrown him away. She had packaged him, ruined him, and delivered him directly to the men who had murdered his father 35 years ago. She had led the wolves to the door of the one safe house he had left, and he had used his own mother's birthday combination to unlock it for them. He wiped his mouth with the back of his bloody, filthy hand. His entire body was shaking with a violent adrenaline-fueled cold. He was a target. He was a loose end, and he was sitting in the very place they wanted him to be. The 48-hour deadline from Sarah's lawyer was not a legal threat. It was a countdown. It was the amount of time they were giving him to find the evidence before they came to collect. His eyes fell to the very bottom of the letter below his mother's signature. There was one final instruction written in the same steady blue ink. There is one last thing. If you are reading this, your life is in immediate danger. There is a phone number below this. It is a direct line. The man who answers is named Marshall Dunn. He is with the United States Marshal Service. He was your father's original handler. He is the only person on this earth you can trust. He has been waiting for this call since the day I died. Call him now. Below it, 10 digits. A phone number. It looked so ordinary. It was his only way out of the grave his life had become. His phone was still in his pocket. The screen cracked from when he had dropped it. He picked it up, his fingers numb and clumsy. He looked at the number on the page, then at the keypad. He was covered in his own sick shaking in a dark basement, about to call a federal agent he had never met and tell him he was a ghost. He pressed the first digit. His thumb slipped. He wiped it on his jeans, which were already damp with concrete dust and sweat. He tried again, punching in the numbers one by one. Each beep of the keypad sounded like a gunshot in the suffocating silence. He pressed the green call button and held the phone to his ear. It rang once. A sterile digital sound. It rang twice. He imagined it echoing in a sterile government office, a phone that had sat silent for 2 years. On the third ring, a man answered. There was no greeting. No hello, just a single sharp, gravelly word. Done. Adam's throat closed. He tried to speak, but only a dry click came out. He swallowed, the taste of bile and fear coating his tongue. Who is this? The voice on the other end demanded, impatient, sharp as a knife. Marshall Dunn. Adam choked out the words, feeling foreign and heavy. My name is Adam Carter. He paused, taking a ragged, shuddering breath. This was the moment, the leap into the abyss. But I think my real name is Adam Costello. There was a silence on the line. It was not a long silence, maybe only 3 seconds, but it stretched into an eternity. It was a silence so complete, so heavy, that Adam was sure he had made a terrible mistake. He was sure the man was tracing the call, that he had just signed his own death warrant. Then a sound. A long, heavy, weary exhale of breath. It was the sound of a man who had been holding his breath for 2 years. Son, the voice Dunn said. The sharpness was gone, replaced by a profound, grim exhaustion. I've been waiting for this call. Ever since we lost your mother. We knew this day might come. Another pause, the sound of a man steeling himself. Where are you, Adam? Tell me exactly where you are. I'm in her house. Adam said, the relief so sudden and so absolute it almost made him weep. I'm in Akron, in the basement. I found a safe. It's open. He's in the house, Adam heard Dunn say to someone else in the room, his voice now urgent, tactical, and stripped of all emotion. He was back on the line. Adam, listen to me. Listen to my voice. Do not move. Do not leave that basement. Do not go near a window. Do not make a sound. And you do not, under any circumstances, talk to anyone. Do you understand me? Not the local police. Not your neighbors. Especially not your wife or anyone connected to her. They're coming for me. Adam whispered, the reality of it settling on him. The lawyer, Sarah. They gave me 48 hours. We know, Dunn said, his voice a cold, hard promise. We've been watching them, hoping they would lead us to you. You just activated the tripwire, son. You're in the crosshairs now, but we're on our way. I have a team, and we are 4 hours out. Can you stay hidden for 4 hours? I think so, Adam stammered. You have to, Dunn said. Lock the basement door if you can. Turn off your phone's light. Find the darkest corner and do not make a sound. We will come for you. 4 hours. Do not move. The line clicked. He was alone again in the total absolute darkness of the basement with an open safe, $850,000 in cash, and the knowledge that the murderers who had hunted his family for 35 years were on their way. The 4 hours that followed were the longest of Adam's life. He did not obey Dunn's command to sit in a dark corner. His mother's son, or perhaps his father's, could not. He took the $850,000 from the safe and packed it into his single-worn suitcase. He took the passports. He took his mother's letter. He left the safe door open, a silent invitation. Then he grabbed the rusted crowbar from his father's toolbox, went to the top of the basement stairs, and sat in the darkness waiting. He would not die in a hole. He listened. Every creak of the old house, every settling groan, every car that passed on the street outside was an executioner. He was a 45-year-old man covered in his own sickened blood, holding a rusted piece of metal, waiting to fight a mafia hit squad. The absurdity was so profound it bordered on madness. It was 3 hours and 51 minutes by his phone's clock when he heard it. Not a car door, not footsteps. It was a faint click from the front door lock. A professional metallic sound. Then silence. Muffled voices from the living room, low and tactical. They were inside. Adam stood up, his legs shaking the crowbar, feeling impossibly heavy. He would take one of them with him. He braced himself at the top of the stairs. A beam of a high-powered flashlight suddenly blinded him, pinning him against the wall. "Do not move," a voice commanded, hard as iron. "I have a crowbar," Adam yelled, his voice cracking. "I'm Adam Costello." The light lowered, moving from his eyes to his chest, then to the crowbar. "Drop it, son. Now." Another man, this one in full tactical gear, came down the stairs. His weapon pointed at the floor. He kicked the crowbar away. "He's clear." Adam stumbled up the last few steps into his mother's living room. It was full of men. They were large, dressed in dark functional gear, and they moved with a silent, synchronized purpose. In the center of the room, looking completely out of place under Evelyn's floral lampshade, stood a man in a rumpled suit. He was in his early 60s, with a face that looked like it had been carved from old wood, a broken nose, and the most tired eyes Adam had ever seen. "Adam Costello," the man said. It was not a question. It was the voice from the phone. "I'm Marshal Dunn." Adam just nodded, his throat too tight to speak. "My team is sweeping the perimeter," Dunn said, his voice all business. "We'll be out of here in 20 minutes. A young agent with a laptop was already examining the open safe in the basement. Another was running a fiber optic camera under the doors. "Found them, sir," an agent by the front window called out. "Two of them, microcams, one on the porch light, one in the birdhouse across the street. They were watching the front door." Dunn nodded, his expression dark. "Just like she said. They were waiting for you to find it for them. Bag them. We're taking the hard drives." Dunn turned back to Adam, his gaze softening for just a fraction of a second. "Your mother, Elena. She was one of the bravest witnesses I have ever had. 35 years she stayed dark. Never made a mistake, never got greedy, never drew attention. She raised a son, lived a life all with a gun to her head. She was a goddamn rock." Adam finally found his voice. "The letter," he whispered. "It said they were hunting us. Hunting her." Dunn's face hardened. "The Falcones never forget. It's a generational sickness. The old man is dying, and his grandsons wanted to clean the books to tie up the one loose end that shamed their family. Your father's testimony put their grandfather away for 20 years. They wanted the witness who got away. They wanted Elena." He steered Adam into the kitchen, away from the flurry of activity. He leaned against the counter, right where his mother used to make his breakfast. "We've been watching the Falcones for a year," Dunn said. "We knew they were active. We knew they were looking for something. But we never made the connection to your mother. She was buried too deep. We thought she was a perfect ghost." Dunn sighed, the sound of a man reliving an old failure. "But your mother knew. She knew they would never stop. She knew they would come for you to get to her. So she hired a PI," Adam said, repeating the words from the letter, the ones that still felt like a betrayal. "Yes," Dunn said, looking at him with a new respect. "She did. When she got sick, she used that government money, the money in that safe, to hire one of the best private investigators in Los Angeles. Not to watch you, Adam, to watch Sarah." Adam looked at him confused. "Your mother was smarter than all of us," Dunn said, his voice low with admiration. "She knew the weak link in her fortress was you. You were out in the open, a rich, visible target. She suspected they would try to get to you to get to her through your life. And she was right. Her investigator got photos of Sarah meeting with a Falcone associate 6 months before the divorce proceedings even started. So she knew, Adam whispered, the sickness returning. Sarah, your mother, Dunn interrupted, was not just a witness, Adam. She was a fighter. She was building a brand new case against the Falcone family from the outside. She was gathering her own evidence, photos, bank transfers. She was preparing to burn them to the ground, all from her quiet little house in Ohio. She was protecting you, son, to the very last. We just got here too late to tell her we had picked up her trail. Adam sat down heavily at the small kitchen table. His mother had not been a victim in hiding. She had been a general fighting a 35-year war. Adam's mind was a storm, a chaotic swirl of new, impossible facts. He shook his head, the image of his mother's cold, capable eyes in those passport photos fighting with the memory of the woman who baked cookies. But one piece still did not fit. But Sarah, he said, his voice raw. He looked at Dunn. How? Why? She was my wife. She hated me. She smiled when I lost everything. How could she? Why would she work with murderers? Dunn shook his head, his expression grim. That's the part that changes this whole thing, Adam. That's the part your mother's PI was still untangling when she passed. He leaned in, his voice dropping. The Falcones are smarter than you think. They've been laundering their reputation for a generation. They don't just use guns anymore. They use psychology. He paused, letting the silence in the kitchen stretch. They didn't approach Sarah Carter as the Falcone crime family. They didn't show up with threats and black sedans. They knew that would send her running right to the police and right to you. They were much, much smarter than that. Adam stared, not understanding. Then how? They approached her as a solution to a problem, Dunn said. Her problem was a husband who had become distant, successful, and secretive. A husband she was already beginning to resent. They sent a very slick, very convincing man to her real estate office. He told her he was a private investigator specializing in high-stakes, white-collar fraud. He fed her a story. Dunn continued, his voice a relentless monotone. He told her he was hired by a different client who had been defrauded by you, Adam. He told her he had uncovered a massive secret life, a gambling addiction, offshore accounts, embezzlement from your own firm. The blood drained from Adam's face. The evidence. Exactly, Dunn said, snapping his fingers. She didn't believe him, not at first. So he started leaking her the proof. The forged bank statements, the casino receipts from comped trips you never took, the fake testimony from a colleague who was on their payroll. They didn't just tell her a lie, Adam. They built an entire ironclad fabricated reality around her. They gave her a monster and told her it was her husband. Adam fell back against the kitchen counter. The black, suffocating rage he had felt for Sarah, the white-hot hatred that had fueled him for months, suddenly evaporated. It did not fade. It vanished like a plug pulled from a drain, leaving a vast, cold, hollow emptiness. He saw her face outside the courthouse, her cold smile, her final cruel words. "Oh my God," he whispered. She was not a villain. She was a pawn. She was the most catastrophic fool in the entire game. She had not been lying when she looked at him with those cold, dead eyes and said, "You are not the man I married." She truly believed it. She thought he was a degenerate, a criminal, a threat to her children. She thought she was the protector. She thought she was the one being brave, the one saving Leo and Maya from the monster in the next room. And in her desperate, terrified, and manipulated attempt to save her family, she had delivered them all to the Falcones. "Where is she?" Adam asked, his voice hollow. "A team in Los Angeles picked her up for questioning early this morning just before I got on the jet," Dunn said. "She was defiant. She thought we were part of your legal tricks. She kept demanding to speak to her lawyer, Patricia Voss, who, by the way, is also going to prison. And then," Dunn said, "we stopped asking her about your gambling debts, and we started asking her about the Falcone family. We showed her a surveillance photo of her private investigator having dinner with Gianni Falcone's grandson." Dunn let out a long breath. She broke Adam. Completely. The kind of total psychic collapse you cannot fake. She understood. She finally understood what they used her for, and what she did to you. what she almost did to her own children. Dunn stood up straight, his duty as a marshal clicking back into place. She's agreed to testify. She's our star witness. She's going to tell a jury exactly how they fed her every single piece of false evidence. She's going to burn them to the ground. "We need to move you, Adam," Dunn said, snapping his field kit shut. "You're not safe here, not until we have the Falcones in cuffs." Adam nodded, his mind numb, but he held up a hand. "My kids," he said, his voice a dry rasp. "They're with Sarah's sister in Portland. They saw her arrested. They must be terrified. They probably think I'm a monster. I have to call them. Please." Dunn studied his face for a long second, then nodded curtly. "You have 5 minutes. Use my phone. It's secure." He handed Adam the satellite phone. Adam's fingers, still caked with his mother's basement, felt too large and clumsy for the small keys. He punched in his sister-in-law's number from memory. It rang a strange, tinny sound. A voice answered, young and cracked with panic. "Hello?" "Leo," Adam breathed. "Leo, it's Dad." "Dad?" His son yelled, a mixture of terror and desperate relief. "Dad, what is happening? The police came. They came here and they took Mom. They arrested her. They said it was about fraud. Is she okay? What did you do?" The last 3 words, "What did you do?" hit Adam like a physical slap. He closed his eyes, leaning his head against his mother's kitchen wall. "Listen to me, Leo," Adam said, fighting to keep his voice from breaking. "I'm here. I'm okay, and it's all going to be okay. I promise you. But Mom, it's complicated, son," Adam said, the understatement of the century. "It's more complicated than you can possibly imagine. But I need you to listen to me, Leo. This is the most important part. Your mom loves you. I love you. More than anything. None of this, not one single part of this, is your fault. You and Maya did nothing wrong. This is about adults and lies. You understand me?" He heard a muffled sob on the other end and then a small, trembling voice. "Dad." It was Maya. "I'm here, baby girl. I'm right here." "Dad," she whispered, her voice so broken it tore him in half. Is it true? Did you do the bad things? The things Mom said? Did you gamble all our money away?" A sound, half sob, half choke, escaped Adam's throat. She believed it. Of course she believed it. Her mother told her it was true. "No," he said, the word cracking. "No, Maya. Oh God, no. That was never real. None of it. I never did any of that. I swear to you I never did." He struggled for the words, for a way to explain a mafia war to a 14-year-old girl. There were bad people, Maya. Very, very bad people. They lied, they tricked Mom, and they tricked me. They lied to both of us. But it's over now. The police, the good guys, they caught them. They caught all the people who lied. It's over. I promise. "I'm coming for you," he said, his voice thick. "As soon as I can. I am coming to get you and Leo. Just hold on. I love you so much." He hung up the phone, his body shaking, and looked at Dunn. "They're okay. They're just kids." Dunn nodded, his face unreadable. "Let's go, Costello. We've got a war to finish." 6 months later, the case was a national sensation. The media called it The Ghost and the Grift. The fall of the Falcone family, brought down by a dead librarian and the wife they had so thoroughly deceived, was the kind of story that sold papers. For Adam, the noise was just static. His life was slowly being rebuilt, this time on a foundation of truth. The California Department of Insurance issued a public apology. His license was restored with full honors. The fraudulent judgments against him were expunged from the record, every lie erased by the avalanche of truth. His name, Adam Carter, was cleared. He and Sarah finalized their divorce 2 months ago. It was quiet, mediated, and profoundly sad. There were no lawyers yelling, no false accusations. There was just the quiet signing of papers, the final act of a partnership that had been destroyed by forces neither of them understood until it was too late. The trust was gone, shattered forever. But the hatred, Adam realized, was also gone, replaced by a complex, weary pity. They agreed to full joint custody, two broken people promising to co-parent two children who were just beginning to heal. After the Marshal Service had meticulously cataloged every piece of evidence, they released the house in Ohio back to him. Adam sold it within a week. He took the $850,000 his mother had left for him, her 35-year-old emergency fund, and he bought a small, unassuming 3-bedroom house in a quiet California suburb just 10 minutes away from Leo and Maya. Today he stood on the steps of the federal courthouse in Chicago. He was not wearing his old expensive suits. He was just a man in a simple blue blazer, a witness. He looked up at the stone columns, the weight of his history settling on his shoulders. He was no longer Adam Carter, the successful insurance adjuster from Pasadena, the man who lived in a glass house. That man had been a fiction. He was Adam Costello. He was the son of Elena and Vincent, and he was here to finish the war his mother had started 35 years ago. He took a deep breath, straightened his tie, and walked inside to testify. Before he left Ohio for the last time, Adam was loading the final box of his mother's photo albums into the trunk of his old Honda. The house behind him was empty, sold its contents either in a landfill or in the small suitcase he had arrived with. He was about to close the trunk when a pickup truck, one he recognized, pulled up across the street. Mark Jennings got out. He did not slam the door. He did not swagger. He just stood by his truck for a long moment, his hands stuffed deep in his jeans pockets, looking at Adam across the street. Adam felt nothing. No fear, no anger, no need for vindication. He just waited. Finally, Mark crossed the street, his work boots scuffing the pavement. He stopped about 10 feet away, his eyes fixed on the cracked driveway. "Hey, Adam," he said. His voice was low, almost inaudible. Adam just nodded. "Mark, Mark started kicking at a loose piece of gravel. "I read the papers, the whole thing, about your dad and the mafia, that Falcone family. That's just crazy stuff, man." He looked up, and for the first time, Adam saw the deep, profound embarrassment in his eyes. "Listen," Mark said, his voice cracking slightly. "I'm sorry for what I said in the hardware store. I was a real bastard, Adam. I had no idea. I'm sorry." Adam leaned against the trunk of his car. He looked at this man, this ghost from his past, who had represented all the judgment and failure he had been running from. He had been so desperate for the approval of people like Mark, people from the life he had left behind. Now their opinions felt like dust. "It's okay, Mark," Adam said, and he was surprised to find that he meant it. "You didn't know. You couldn't have." Mark shook his head, looking back at the small vinyl-sided house. "Your mom, Evelyn," he said, his voice full of a new sudden awe. "She must have been one hell of a woman, to live here with that kind of secret, to protect you like that. Just wow." "Yeah," Adam said, a quiet pride settling in his chest. "She was." An awkward silence hung between them, the chasm of their different lives too wide to cross. Mark just nodded, then nodded again, as if to himself. "Well, drive safe, Adam." "You too, Mark." Mark Jennings walked back to his truck and drove away. Adam got into his Honda. As he pulled out of the driveway, he looked at the house one last time. He had arrived here a ruined man, a failure in the eyes of the world, defined by a $4 million house he had lost. He was leaving as the son of Elena Costello, his identity forged not by his own fragile successes, but by her iron-willed sacrifice. He did not need this town's approval anymore. He had his mother's. 1 year later, the Falcone family was convicted. The trial was brutal, but Sarah's testimony, corroborated by the evidence your mother had gathered and the surveillance the marshals had collected, was irrefutable. Gianni Falcone's grandsons were sentenced to life in prison. The war was over. Adam stood in the backyard of his new house. It was not a fortress of glass and steel. It was a modest 3-bedroom ranch, the kind with beige siding and a slightly overgrown lawn. It was a house that was lived in, not curated. From the small patio, he could hear the familiar rhythmic thud of a basketball on concrete. Leo, now 17, was practicing free throws at a hoop they had installed on the garage. His form was good. Several colleges were looking at him again. The sliding glass door opened, and Maya, 15, stepped out. She sat at the patio table and opened her sketchpad. Adam looked over her shoulder. The page was exploding with color. Bright, vibrant watercolors of a coastline, the blue of the ocean so deep it looked real. The dark charcoal boxes were gone. The doorbell rang. Adam went to answer it. Sarah stood on the doorstep. She looked tired, but she looked like herself again. The cold, brittle shell she had worn during the divorce was gone, replaced by the quiet, permanent sadness of a person who had to live with an impossible mistake. "Hey," she said. "Hey, Sarah. They're almost ready," he said. The silence between them was not the hostile void of their last days, but an awkward, respectful space. They were two co-parents bound forever by two children and a shared surreal trauma. Leo and Maya came out hugging their mom. As they walked to her car, Sarah turned back to Adam. "Thank you, Adam," she said. It was a simple phrase, but it carried the weight of 1,000 apologies. "You're welcome, Sarah," he replied. "Have a good weekend." He watched them drive away, then went back to his patio chair. He looked at Maya's abandoned painting. He thought about the man he had been, the one who measured his life in dollars and square footage. He thought about his mother. He realized Elena Costello had saved him twice. Once, when he was 12 years old, she saved him from the Falcones by giving him a normal, fabricated life. And then, when he was 45, she saved him again, this time from that same fabricated life, by leaving him the truth in a basement. "You gave me a normal life, Mom," he thought, looking up at the bright California sky. "But I owed you a real one." By facing his past, by standing in that courtroom as Adam Costello, he had finally paid the debt. He was no longer a ghost. He was free. We often believe our identity is the life we've built, but true identity is the legacy we carry, forged in sacrifices we never knew. The worst betrayals can be the catalyst forcing us to uncover the truth of who we were always meant to be.